Okay, gang, let's go through some of these problems from 3.3. So 51. There's a couple ways to handle this. One way to handle this is to take off the 3/2, like move it to the side. Take the quotient rule of this, and then at the very end, the answer is 3/2 larger. For people that don't like a lot of like little bits floating around, you can do that because whatever the derivative of this is, it'll be multiplied by 3/2. I'm not going to do that because that will confuse people. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to distribute it in. So I'm just rewriting this. This would not be my favorite way to do it, but I think when you're first learning, this is the least confusing. So that way I'm not making anything disappear, and you don't want to do a product rule here. That's a waste of your effort. And it wouldn't be product rule anyway because this is not a variable. So I think the best way for me to write this when you're first looking at it is like this. Alright, so now let's do the derivative at this stage. So I'm going to go ahead and use the quotient rule to do this. So the denominator times the derivative of the numerator. So that's a 0. That's going to be a -3 cosine x. Alright, so the bottom times the top minus the top. Times the derivative of the bottom. -2 sine x. Because derivative of cos is sine, negative sine. And then the denominator squared. Okay, gang, I'm not done yet, but that's the derivative. The derivative is done. The rest is just the algebra. Okay, so that's the derivative. So now let's work on the simplify stage. Alright, now you're multiplying a positive times a negative, so that's negative. The 2 times 3 is 6. And then you got a cosine times a cosine, so you're going to write that as cosine squared of x. Alright, now over here, let me first figure out, the order of this might confuse people and the negative, so let me just rewrite this. At the end of the day, negative times, at the end of the day, this is like you're multiplying a positive 2 sine x, because a negative times a negative is positive. So times a 3 minus 3 sine x. So it might be the easiest way to look at it. Like if I rearrange it, it's basically this times this. Alright, so that's going to be positive 6 sine x, and then negative, oh, how do we have a little visitor here? Negative 6 sine squared x. All over 4, because you got to square the 2 here as well as the cosine. So 4 cosine squared x. Alright, now you can use some trig here if you want. So if you're going to do that, let me rewrite that. So you would, I'll just add an extra step. I'm not sure you guys need it, but I'll just add an extra step. Alright, I'm going to put the negative, I'm going to pull out the -6, and I'm going to reorganize things. I'm going to pull this one towards the middle. So this one I moved to the middle. This one I have to factor out. That's positive, so it's negative sine x. Okay. At the very least, you do have to reduce the fraction. You cannot leave it like this. It has to be reduced, meaning you have to reduce the 6 with the 4. Now, you may go another step here and notice that cosine squared plus sine squared equals to 1. That's a Pythagorean identity. cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x equals to 1. That's one of the 3 Pythagorean identities. So I'm going to replace this with a 1. I don't usually fiddle too much with the identities, but for those of you who like them, I can go a little farther here. So in general, for those of you who don't want to fiddle with the identities, you at the very least have to reduce the fraction, but after that, if you leave it, I'll give you full credit. Those of you that are fiddling with it, you're going to keep going. Now, if you're fiddling with it, and I don't usually fiddle with it, but I will do it a little bit now. Now back to this identity here. This identity is movable. You can interchange things. So I could say that the cosine squared of x is equal to 1 minus the sine squared of x. Right, you see that? So that means that over here, if I wanted to, I could say that this is 1 minus the sine squared of x. Alright, but this one on the bottom is quadratic. The one on the top is linear. So if you love fiddling with the trig, you then probably notice what you would do here. I know you guys are so smart. Right, you're going to factor this. It's a difference of perfect square, so it's 1 minus sine x, 1 plus sine x, and then you could reduce this guy with this guy, which at the very end leaves you with this tiny answer, which usually does not happen. They're usually these long answers. You get 2 times 1 plus sine x as the best and nicest answer. That's so eloquent. It's like took this big mess, and using the trig identities, we made it this lovely, sort of simplistic, relatively speaking, solution. Okay, gang, I hope you enjoyed that. So this is really lovely if you do use the identities. Alright, gang, hope you enjoyed that. Catch you. Bye-bye.